This is your Chargers linebacker, Dan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dale Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. This is your first time tuning in the show. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein. It's a Victory Monday. I know you don't have a brisket in front of you right now because you are still currently on the East Coast. You're coming in from Boston this week.
Yep. Dan
Wolkenstein still doing it from the road.
I'm here for you.
And literally, I know that we did not get a chance to put out an announcement for this, but literally Dan Wolkenstein calls me up. We had a scheduled time tonight that we were going to go ahead and do a pre-recording on this. And he says, hey, you want to go ahead and do it live? Sure, let's go. So 15 minutes later, buckle up. Dan is currently, I'm not sure where you're at, Dan, but obviously there's some music ambience in the background. Yep. And here we are. Victory Monday. Chargers defeat the New Orleans Saints in an impressive fashion. Lots to talk about in terms of finally some things that we've seen from the Chargers that we have been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks in terms of their offensive output, specifically in the second quarter. Jesse Minter's defense shows up once again. And hopefully, Dan, from what we've seen from Justin Herbert over these last 2 weeks, Justin Herbert is healthy. And this was the best Justin Herbert that we have gotten this season in terms of downfield throws, pocket awareness, mobility, back to the Justin Herbert of old that we are used to seeing. And we had a lot to dissect. And the Chargers Unleashed hotline was on fire after Sunday's win. So we were going to get into those voicemails as well. But Dan Wolkenstein, before we get into everything and obviously say hello to everyone in the chat, how are you, sir?
It is a victory week for this Los Angeles Chargers team and its fans. Chargers pull out the victory in pretty impressive fashion. I am good on vacation with the family on the East Coast, currently in Boston, living the dream. Boy, does it feel good to be on here after a victory against a team they should have beat, and they did. We got to see some really, really, really good things. Again, not perfect. I'm going to be the realistic optimist.
Boy, good job. Good job.
But lots to be excited about. Chargers nailed the bold prediction from Mr. Wolkenstein. They got 2 second-half touchdowns, if you remember right. And Chargers fans are excited for good reason. Justin Herbert is looking like he's cooking more and more. Ladd McConkey is looking like a pretty darn good rookie alongside a Mr. Joe Alt and company. Chargers offense is coming alive, and they're kind of giving the keys to Justin Herbert to start laying the hammer, figuratively and literally. So lots to be excited about. Chargers Unleashed hotline, like you mentioned, full tilt. You've got 5 voicemails to go through today, so we'll kind of sprinkle those in throughout the episode. You know the drill, folks. We have done this thing. We love these live shows. Call into the hotline anytime, 323-902-7586 to leave your voicemail or question, and we'll get you on an upcoming episode. Lots of folks in the chat already. We have a lot of people talk about Deontay Johnson from the Panthers, myself included. That would be nice. There's questions on here about making a trade. Joe Hortiz, please. Forgotten locale, friend of the show, Jake. Dan on a wilderness retreat. Like Aaron Rodgers. Look, please don't make me out to be like Aaron Rodgers.
Look, you're not in the darkness. Right now, the Jets are in the darkness. You're not.
I have internet. I have Wi-Fi.
No, yes,
I have electricity.
You're fine. Yes.
My team won. My team won this week. I didn't lose to the Patriots this week like Aaron Rodgers did.
But so, at least you're dressed for the weather, I assume. There.
Yes. Boston. Well, I bought today because it's freezing. But I digress. Mr. Hefner, let's pay the bills.
Yes, sir.
Folks in the chat, give us some questions, and let's talk about our friends over at BetOnline.
Well, I want to remind BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in our $200,000 Mega Contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of up to $200K. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Go on over to the website today. That's betonline.ag to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here.
So, Jake, let's just kick this thing off with a voicemail to start this, and we'll get to some of these comments here already that we've got a lot. Again, 5 voicemails. You can call into the voicemail anytime you guys would like. 323-902-7586. I almost forgot the number. Again, 323-902-7586. Voicemail number 1, Jake. Let's hear from Ron from Toledo. Let's hear what Ron has to say.
Hey, Ron, longtime Charger fan, Toledo, Ohio. I'm just really kind of confused on that play that they called on Sammy Fehoko about the uncatchable ball. Didn't we play a game in Kansas City last year where Mahomes threw the ball to the guy, and the two players are on one side of the field, and the ball's cleared on the other side, and they called it pass interference. Oh, it wasn't an uncatchable ball. No, it was pass interference. So why would this be any different?
Dan, was this a voicemail from the Saints game? I think that's the play that the Arizona Cardinals game. Is that what he's referencing? I thought at first he was referencing the no call touchdown.
You know what? It is. It snuck in. That was from Friday. You are correct, sir. Good. Well on you. I was super confused.
I was listening on that. I'm like, what pass interference one are we talking about here? Let's try this one again.
Before.
Let's try this one again. This is how live broadcast works.
All right, then we're gonna skip over to voice number 2, which is, let's go with folks who are feeling good.
What's up, guys? Just finished the game. Felt like great win. Feels good. A lot of good things with Ladd and Justin, the defense, Jesse Menard, but there's just some clear, obvious holes that I think are going to hinder this Chargers team with.
He doesn't sound very happy, by the way. Like the Chargers just won, and he's very monotone.
Dan, now he is
it feels kind of good? ?
He is the physical epitome of your realistic optimism. Okay, just call it like that. That's how a realistic optimist sounds.
I don't know, man. I think when you get to the good teams, they're just going to tear them apart. And, the separation on a lot of these wide receivers outside of Ladd seems like Josh Palmer. Just a little, you can't have both, right? And, hope it turns out well, but I feel like good building blocks. We'll see. I don't know. No questions. Just what are your thoughts? Well, how do you feel about what I just said? Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so Jake, he's wondering. He's worried about the interior offensive line, thinks he's going to get shredded against the better defenses, likes the building blocks from the rookies and free agents that were brought in, and obviously Justin Herbert, and feels good, ? What say you?
I mean, look, a lot to unpack there. As it relates to the offensive line, the interior of the offensive line still needs to get right. And we've already seen it get impacted by better defenses. Go back to the Steelers game, go back to the Chiefs game in terms of that internal pressure. It obviously didn't help from at that point in time that Justin Herbert was hobbled, couldn't move in the pocket as well as he showed on Sunday against the Saints. So yes, that needs to get right, and hopefully that will work itself out. Secondly, the Chargers don't create the schedule, unfortunately. So this was a team in the Saints that was playing with their backup quarterback and Spencer Rattler. You should have won this game by all accounts in terms of what you were going to do offensively, defensively. Next, as it relates to the wide receivers, we're also excited to finally see the breakout game from Ladd McConkey and the way that he did it. 6 targets, 6 catches, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The downfield passing game that I know that everybody was questioning for the first 2 weeks when the running game was handling business. It was good because even still, much like it was against Arizona, the running game just really couldn't take over. But Justin Herbert's arm did. The longest run that you had to actually start the game was a great scramble by Justin Herbert up until that point. And you saw what a healthy Justin Herbert looked like when you have his pocket awareness back, when he is able to use his legs, when he's able to use his mobility. That opens up so many things downfield. We talk so much about Ladd McConkey's game, and deservedly so, but Joshua Palmer made a terrific 45-yard reception downfield. Obviously, the Jalen Reagor, the one target that he got was a makeup for what happened in Arizona. Spectacular catch on the sideline.
Yeah, almost a makeup.
As best as you can say, the one target that was thrown to him, he caught, and it was a spectacular catch one way or the other. But these are the things that hopefully Greg Roman, and it feels like that he has since the bye week And even if it's not to the level of what it was at the Saints game, it seems like the understanding of the passing attack and having Justin Herbert's arm and getting Will Dissly even involved more in the passing game and opening things up in the middle of the field, it looks like this is the balanced offense that you were trying to get to. Now, I know as we're going through this show today, talking about the upcoming trade deadline, do the Chargers still need to go out and get a weapon, whether it's a tight end or a wide receiver? You're going to get absolute yeses out of Dan and I. So Joe Hortiz should definitely be buying at the trade deadline. And we'll dissect those because there's multiple ways, honestly, that they can go on both sides of the ball as it relates to trade deadlines. But realistic optimist, yeah. That sounded like a voicemail that you would leave at least this year. Last year, no. Your voice inflection would be way up. That would be you, and it would be living in the clouds, way optimist. But that sounded more like you this year. So
that was a little calculated and cautious. It sounded like. Look, I agree. The interior offensive line has not been good. Our tackles, both of them, have been fantastic. There's no question about that. That being said, I think we do need to talk about the hero of this game. And there's a lot of them, but I'm talking about the center. After the Bush League penalty from Saints defender, doing the whole gator roll, unacceptable. I hope that guy gets fined and suspended by multiple games. Bradley Bozeman has none of it and goes off on him immediately after. Unfortunate that it becomes a double penalty that gets negated.
Off a terrific play, by the way. I think that's the thing that gets lost in the shuffle is the fact that Justin Herbert did literally just a lob pass to J.K. Dobbins and then ended up going for a first down. It's a fantastic improvisation and a play by Justin Herbert that ends up getting overshadowed by what followed.
And Bradley Bozeman, Rich V. Bozeman won some fans over yesterday, 100%. And you saw post-game, lots of folks talking about it. Jim Harbaugh, when he was given the game balls, the entire locker room went erupting when his name was announced. You heard Justin Herbert talking about it after the fact. And, that's a sign of leadership. And it, is personified in different ways. And say what you will about the style and the play of that interior offensive line. That's a season-defining, game-defining moment. You saw that team kind of rally behind a few kind of big plays. That was one. The Justin Herbert run for 40-something. You would not have seen that the last 6 weeks, that injury, no chance. And that's the type of Justin Herbert playmaking that I think will get this team to be next level. And you're starting to see that swagger a little bit. You see him shaking his head after some of those throws that he's doing.
Herbert was in his bag. Gestures. Yeah, that was probably the most animated I had seen Justin Herbert since he arrived with the Chargers. Danny, it was one of those type of moments where you go back to last year's game against the Raiders and you think about that Jerry Tillery hit on Justin Herbert that was out of bounds, that absolutely just erupted that sideline and woke everybody up. It seemed like that was the moment because, look, we can be honest, that it didn't start well for the Chargers. They went, their first 3 drives were 3 and outs. They obviously had the bad snap from the punt that went behind J.K. Dobbins that was knocked out for a safety, and this game was 3-2. And coming off of the Arizona game, you're like, oh my God, here's the vibes once again. And thankfully, after that play, it seemed like the Chargers were able to get things rolling. Now, as it relates to Bradley Bozeman, I mean, from a center standpoint, from a teammate perspective, yes, that was exactly what you would have liked to see, whether it was Bradley Bozeman or anybody else, to come to have your quarterbacks back like that. And again, sometimes things like that happen, and it really just energizes the rest of the team. And it definitely seemed like it did for the Chargers throughout the rest of that game.
Jake, you were saying that voicemail sounded a lot like me, but we got folks in the chat saying it sounded like you.
I mean, people who might remember my history on this show for 3.5 years, yes. I mean, it's not wrong. I remember exactly that tone. I remember exactly when I was on this show sounding like that. So those memories have not left me.
Rich V. Eeyore called up the hotline.
Okay. That one's good.
Jorge, Jake's pessimism roding off on the fans, too.
Apparently, my pessimism has officially transferred to Dan Wolkenstein. Again, we've talked about this numerous times. I'm not sure what the hell happened, but for some reason, Dan has just gone full villain arc. And maybe not so much today, but it sure as hell seems like it over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, we're just getting started, Jake.
See what I mean?
Started. Here's a comment. Brian Lewis. Again, if you have any comments, thoughts, questions, reactions, put them in the chat. We'll go ahead and put these up as we go through. Brian Lewis, Jake. 3 takes. Number 1, Minter and his defense is the real deal. No matter if we have Jefferson or Chase outside, we need to guard badly because Herb has no time. And 3, Ladd has the potential to be one of the best slot wide receivers. I would go with, in short, yes, yes, yes.
Yes. Jesse Minter once again showing why this Chargers defense is first in the league in terms of points allowed. Again, only allowing 8 points against the Saints. In total, you have only allowed 20 points one time this entire year. This Chargers defense is what is keeping them in games. Now, you'd like to get to a point where the offense takes over.
Hold on, Jake. I have to interrupt you. I apologize. Can you say that first number again? That first statistic you said?
The Chargers defense is first in points allowed throughout the season.
One more time, just for the folks in the back, because it's been 84 years since we
yes,
say something like
the
this.
Chargers defense is first in the league in terms of points allowed.
Let
you got that? You good?
Proverbial sink in.
Okay. I'm going to get to a lot of aspects of what Jesse Minter has done here in a little bit as we go on throughout this show, specifically at certain positions. But you got to hand it to him. Really, you do. For what he has done in a circumstance where you have certain key players that are out of this game, what he has been able to do, how he has been able to prepare. Game preparation when it comes to defense is something that has eluded this team through the last 2 defensive regimes. This was historically a game that, even if the circumstances were the same as it relates to who was playing on the opposite side of the field in New Orleans Saints, we could have said, hey, the Chargers should win this game, but how confident would you be that they would? Same goes for previous games against how that Raiders game was going in the first half, how that Panthers game was going. I mean, you would have said different things with the different coaching regimes, specifically on the defense in previous years. Jesse Minter, what he has been able to do through the first 8 weeks of this season is something to behold. And even when you go back to the Chiefs game, and even looking at that as a loss, holding Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to 17 points when you had a slew of injuries in that week. I guarantee you, when it comes to the Chiefs game again, Jesse Minter is going to be well prepared, and hopefully the Chargers can get a win out of that. But Jesse Minter, along with Jim Harbaugh, has absolutely changed the culture of this team. And you really got to give it to the defense because they are keeping the Chargers in games that ended up being close. And these are the type of games, as you saw from the Saints, that you would like to have. You guys just have to get the offense going, being more consistent, being able to put 7 on the board. And the more you pull away, the more you're going to see that Jesse Minter defense be able to thrive, put its ears back, go after the quarterback, and create negative plays.
Yeah, this defense is so fun to watch, and it's so special, and it's so exciting, I guess, to say the least, to see a defense that can keep your team in games. Unfortunately, the offense has kind of been slow. Again, they would be undefeated if they just scored 20 points a game. But again, still in the winning column, 4-3, and things seem to be kind of rolling a little bit more. Again, a lot of folks are not playing right now on this Chargers team. They're keeping it afloat. You're looking at 4 wide receivers projected to be of the starting 7 currently not playing on this Chargers squad. You got Darius Davis, you got Quentin Johnston, you got Brendan Rice, who people thought were going to be playing, and I'm missing one.
DJ Chark? Or did you already say
DJ Chark. There we go, DJ Chark. All 4 of those receivers we all thought training camp would be in the mix for playing time. And yes, I do think DJ Chark will make a difference. That said, I do like what they are starting to do. I like the Jalen Reagor pickup, less because of the results, more because of the intent. They're bringing in speed. Jalen Reagor is a legit 4.3 speed. You saw him open now 2 big plays. Unfortunate fumble first game. This game, it went right back to him. Props to Justin Herbert. And they're also bringing Ladd McConkey downfield, stretching the field. And so add another DJ Chark into that, add Darius Davis into that. That's good. Now, does that mean they shouldn't go for another receiver? No. And I think they should. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I do think DJ Chark will make a difference. It's kind of weird, the timing, though, the window that they opened, and then it's been 2 games, and we haven't seen him.
Not
He's
activated.
been questionable on both. I can't imagine him not being activated this coming game, because if he does not get activated, he is out for the season.
He'll be activated.
I hope so.
Again, listen to your negativity, dude. Like, you can't even get up for a player whose 21-day window has opened, and you're already thinking that he's not going to make it?
We're on day 15. Usually the 21-day window opens and you play like 3 days later.
Just saying,
weird.
bro. Just
a
saying.
little weird. Charles asked, what do you think about Jalen Reagor? Back-to-back games now with explosive plays. He had a catch of, what was it? Like,
I can't remember the yards.
24 yards.
Spectacular toe touch catch.
Arguably the
Spectacular catch.
best of his career, I think.
I mean, hey, 1 target, 1 catch. You did it when your team needed it. That's great. I'll be interested to see when the Chargers have their full complement of wide receivers back, i.e. DJ Chark, Quentin Johnston as well. Where is Jalen Reagor going to fit on this totem pole? I'm not sure what it's going to look like. So time will tell. But hey, kudos to him in this game for stepping up, and when his team needed him, terrific catch.
Yep. Yes, Athir is in the chat. What's up, boys? We are live. We are live. Yes, we are. Lots of folks calling me Emo Dan. People are asking if I'm in church. Nope.
Definitely not in church. Lobby bar. He's got baseball on the screen. Dan Wolkenstein just dressed for the weather, but you kind of look a little bit emo.
I do. Okay.
Apparently,
I just need to smile more. That's what we're from here.
Not Robert Pattinson, Batman emo. Not that far, but kind of got that feel a little bit.
Okay. Remember, guys, punts are good. Can we talk about J.K. Scott?
Hey.
By the way.
Hey. Outside of the bad snap to start off the game, the leg was working for J.K. Scott. Yeah, I can't remember what the average I think that he said, but it was like 50 plus that he was averaging on his punts for yesterday.
57 plus per attempt with a long of 67.
Pretty damn good.
And there was some hang time there. There were some moon shots. And that's the J.K. Scott that we're used to seeing. Let's see. I'm glad Jorge Rodriguez came in here. I'm glad to see Herb be himself.
I think everybody was happy to see Justin Herbert look like his own old self again. Dan, you want to break down some of those plays, obviously, that just shows the mobility. I think his foot feels pretty damn good right now, being able to pull off some of those runs. Yes. Dan, I got to go directly to the Lad McConkey second touchdown, because there was so much that took place. Obviously, the culmination is Lad McConkey, just going up over a defender, getting a second touchdown in his breakout game, and that is fantastic for him. But you go back and you just dissect how that whole play evolves in just a short period of time. Justin Herbert gets a snap. He looks like he's going to pull down and run to the gap to the right, literally tucks it away. Goes there. No, it's not going to be there. Rolls back out to the left. Takes the ball back out. Throws on the run to Lad McConkey in the corner of the end zone. Everything about that play is just magic from both quarterback and wide receiver. That's the Justin Herbert that is absolutely lethal when he is on the move. That is the Justin Herbert that is accurate, precise, can absolutely decimate defenses. Dan, I know that there was an incomplete pass earlier in the game, but to see Justin Herbert rolling out on more bootlegs, again, just being more mobile, the anticipation when he is able to be mobile, the freedom that he is able to have and create plays when he is mobile. This is the Justin Herbert that we were used to seeing.
Yeah. Herbert looked good. Herbert looked engaged. Herbert was on the money. And that's 2 games in a row where this is a top-tier elite quarterback who's getting healthy and getting more comfortable with the weapons and the offense. It's unfortunate that weapons kind of let him down the previous game, and you heard a lot of people allude to it on this football team, kind of having to step up this week, and they did in a big way. Again, no Quentin, no Darius, no Brendan Rice to speak of after his poor performance the week prior, and no DJ Chark. They're down 4 dudes, and they don't have Hayden Hurst. That's 5 pass catchers they're without. And they're putting up points. Could they do more? Sure. But that was a pretty good performance all in all. Now, again, didn't start off great. And I tweeted about it. I think it was like midway through the second quarter where I'm like, same old offense, same old defense. Defense still cooking, offense still sleeping. I mean, you're losing 2-0. And I'm like, am I watching a baseball game right now? Like, this is not right and weird. And special teams, of course, finds a game to not be perfect, which again, like that was probably the worst special teams performance I've seen because of 2 specific plays. But like that was still all in all, you saw, Dicker doing Dicker things, J.K. Scott booming. They had some miscues, sure. They gave up some long returns, but for the most part, like this was a team win. And that's kind of the win that you'd like to see. They finished strong. They kind of put the foot on the throat a bit towards the end, Jake, which I think was probably what most of us wanted to see. And I think the returning to familiar form for Justin Herbert, all of us were sitting here just waiting for the shoe to drop once that third quarter started. We were waiting. Is this going to be another game in which this team can't score a forking second half touchdown, which they hadn't done since week 1? And I tweeted about it. I think it was like midway through the third quarter where I was like, I don't remember what the last touchdown was the second half of a game. Like, do you remember what the touchdown was in week 1?
It's been a long time. I think it was week 1, honestly.
It was. But do you remember what it was? I don't remember it.
I don't remember specifically what the touchdown was. No.
Couldn't tell you.
But Chargers' highest scoring output that they've had since week 2 against the Panthers. And again, for just not just talking about second half points, because they've done that, but definitely not over the last month essentially until the Saints game. But it had been a long time since they had just scored points in the second half. But to have a second half touchdown, to have that long of a draw, I mean, again, it's a testament to what your defense has done to keep you in certain games.
Elijah Molden. Charles Mott says, we need to sign Elijah Molden. Yeah. Dan,
I'll let you take that one.
Jake,
if there's one thing that Dan Wolkenstein is optimistic about today, it's been Elijah Molden since the day that he was actually signed to the Chargers.
Since the day he was allowed to be drafted by an NFL team, and he went to a different team originally, which was not fun. I loved him coming out of college. I loved his instincts, his versatility, Swiss Army knife type, and he's just a gamer, man. That's 2 interceptions he should have had in that game alone that were taken away. Elijah Molden, huge pickup by Joe Hortiz. And yeah, I agree. He is the type that they should re-sign 100%. It's going to be interesting. We're not going to talk about it now, but it'll be interesting which of these DBs they end up re-signing. You got Kristian Fulton on a contract here. Asante Samuel Jr. on a contract here. Elijah Molden on a contract here. I mean, if you were to re-sign one of them, which would you do? Only one. That's tough, right?
It's tough because I love the way that Kristian Fulton has played since arriving with the Chargers as well. I think that this has definitely been a resurgence for him coming over from the Titans, which is, again, not talking about the Titans team specifically, but all 3 of your acquisitions that you got from the Titans have turned out to be big-time players on your defense. Kristian Fulton, Tart, Elijah Molden. This is just a good evidence of a front office and a scouting department that knows how to find players, and ultimately, because that's half of the argument. The other half is having the coaching staff that is able to better develop the player, make them into a better player at the end of the day, get them to fit their system, get them to play better ultimately. And when you have Jesse Minter in the helm, it's obviously proven that it can be that. So if it was me, I still think it would be too tough to call for just one. Joe Hortiz's philosophy. You can never have enough DBs. So time will tell.
Let's get to the voicemails, Jake. Again, we had 5 in this one. Again, if you have not done so, you can always call into the hotline, 323-902-7586. Usually we get most of the voicemails either directly before, during, or after the football game. But if you want to leave questions during the week, we'll be happy to answer them for you. Voicemail, Jake, number 3. Let's hear what Ray from San Diego has to say.
Fellas, what's going on? This is Ray from San Diego at a bar with my girlfriend. watching her beloved Niners. I'll sub that start, but that's not the news. The news is mother effing Chargers. That's what I wanted to see. Justin Herbert in the mix, spreading the ball, defense on point. Did what we needed to do. Everything went great. I'm happy. We'll dissect the game during the week, but for now, we are 4-3. Both the fuck up.
We're in the mix. We're 4-3. We're bolting up. We're feeling good. That's what we like to see. Also, shout out to his girlfriend for getting that Niners victory. Feels good about that, I would imagine. People are happy. People are happy. Amazing what a good Justin Herbert performance looks like.
Yeah, it's always good vibes on Victory Mondays for sure. But I think that it's, the Raiders and the Panthers game week 1 and week 2 when the running game was doing their thing was great. It was victories either way. But even then, still people were calling for is Jim Harbaugh just taking the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands? Like, where's the old Justin Herbert? Well, outside of battling injuries and for a period of time not having his two elite tackles along his offensive line and sometimes a non-existent running game. Again, I think that bye week, regardless if your results are 2-1 and dropping that game against the Arizona Cardinals, I think that bye week showed a lot of the things that they needed to fix. And in terms of getting guys more involved and not just seemingly relying on a vanilla offense of just run, pass, opening up the game a little bit more, allowing Will Dissly to become a little bit more versatile and not just a blocker, especially when Hayden Hurst is out. And again, we're talking about Justin Herbert spreading this out to guys that he has barely even had some time with. Guys like Simi Fehoko, who have stepped up in big-time moments for games. Again, I still think that back foot touched the end zone, and it should have been called a touchdown for that. I think he got robbed on that. But
I don't know. The one thing I don't know about that one, Jake, is I know there's a rule where the heel counts now, and it didn't before. But I don't know how that relates if the foot's going backwards.
You got me.
Because if you do the toe drag, you're good.
The post that Simi Fehoko put up on Instagram of literally the still shot of both of his feet touching the ground when he had possession of the football, that you got me there. I think it was robbery. But back to the point at hand, Justin Herbert spreading the ball out and not just relying on one guy. We talk so much about the history of Justin Herbert with Keenan Allen, how it was always, if it was 3rd down and 10, 3rd down and 8, you knew where the ball was going. You knew where it was going. It was going to Keenan Allen, and rightfully so. He was your most reliable wide receiver that you had. In this circumstance, Dan, I think he is getting so comfortable to where it's just who's ever open, I don't care whose name is on the back of the jersey. I'm going to find it. I'm going to spread it out. We're going to keep drives going.
Now, that being said, he did get awfully comfortable with that boy Ladd.
Oh, yes.
Take this one. But Ladd had a day.
Ladd McConkey. We've all been waiting for what the breakout game was going to be, and sure enough, we finally saw it. The long touchdown pass that he got by somehow grabbing that pass from Justin Herbert to next to Alontae Taylor. And then the magic that he does after the catch was even better than the catch itself, to cut back inside. Yeah, to cut back inside down the field and then cut back inside to elude the defenders to get in the end zone. That was just a magical play. And then, again, I talked about it earlier as far as just everything for his second touchdown that came about, from Justin Herbert's pocket mobility to finding him in the back corner of the end zone. That whole play in general just once again shows you that in a short period of time, these two have developed such a connection together, and the potential for Ladd McConkey. Dan, remember this stat. Ladd McConkey is the first Chargers wide receiver since Keenan Allen to record a 100-yard game in his first season. And if I remember correctly, the first Keenan Allen 100-yard game, if I remember it correctly, was against the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. Remember his breakout game where he was hurdling the defender? And I think and if I remember correctly, he got in on 2 touchdowns in that. Yeah, got in on 2 touchdowns in that game. I think that was Keenan's first 100-yard game. But very reminiscent in certain ways for what Ladd McConkey did. So very fitting, promising that you see this connection between Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey, and hopefully it's going to build even more moving forward.
Yeah, there's a few things. Ladd McConkey, we talked about at training camp when we saw him live. Like, he is always open. He's always yards away from others on defense. And you're starting to see Justin Herbert and company see that. He's good, man. He is good. And they could have with him, I know it's an easy and probably lazy to say like the Wes Welker comparisons, but he has that Wes Welker vibe where it's just a safety valve crutch like Tom Brady had. And anytime Tom Brady needed a 3rd and 4 conversion, you knew what was happening. Is Wes Welker either going to do it out or an in, and it was happening, and you couldn't do anything about it. Ladd McConkey has that same thing where it's inevitable as long as I can get it to him. So Ladd is going to be good. The thing I like more about Ladd, though, Jake, is he's got some real juice. That kid is quick, and he is fast.
He's not just
Quick
a slot
and
receiver.
fast. He is not. I mean, you're seeing him. Those 2 touchdowns he had, one was Moss. One was kind of a Moss, too, like in the back of the end zone that he had no business catching. Both of those had no business catching, if we're being honest. Yeah, I really like that a lot. A lot of questions, Jake. Let's get to some of these free agent or trades questions before the deadline. We got a lot of Deontay Johnson. We got a lot of tight end talk. We've got folks wondering if we should go for a tight end or Mike Williams. There's a bunch in here. So let's kind of go down the list. I think it was a fear that was saying that he had a problem possibly giving up a 4th for Deontay Johnson. Jake, what would be your trade, and who would the receiver be that you want?
I mean, Deontay Johnson obviously just makes a lot of sense. Panthers being in the condition that they're being, they should be sellers at the trade deadline, and the Chargers should definitely be interested in that. Again, we haven't seen what this Chargers offense will look like when DJ Chark returns. So there's still kind of that question mark as it relates to the offensive weapon that needs to be given to Justin Herbert and this offense. And whether that's a wide receiver or it's a tight end that you can have Will Dissly go back to more of his traditional blocking, and you could have a much better receiving threat of a tight end to come in there and move the sticks. I think all options honestly are on the table. I think Joe Hortiz and the Chargers will end up executing a trade. And whether that's on, I do. And whether that's on offense or defense.
What world are we living in that we're predicting a Chargers make a trade before a deadline?
Well, I mean, let's just go case in point for who the previous regime was that never made a trade during the draft, that never traded back in the draft, and hardly ever was active during the trade deadline. When you've already seen what Joe Hortiz has done in a short period of time, I have all the confidence in the world to believe that he is going to do something, especially for the Chargers to end up making a playoff push. You saw what your AFC West rivals have done just in the last 2 weeks with the 2 trades that they have pulled off. I think the Chargers can evaluate their roster respectfully. Again, Joe Hortiz has even said this, always churning the bottom of the roster, always looking for ways to improve it. It's his own words saying the work is never done. So I think the Chargers are going to be in at least trade talks. If one hasn't if one is not able to come to fruition because of another team offering more, what have you, just the fact that the Chargers would be in trade talks alone is a big step up from where we were just a short period of time ago with this front office. So
Yeah,
yes,
the fact is
I have
more
confidence.
than 1% chance.
I have confidence.
There's a question there. Would you rather do a tight end in a trade or Mike Williams if you had to choose between the two?
There's gives and takes between it. First of all, it would depend on the tight end. I know everybody's talking about, David Njoku as a possibility, just given Cleveland's. Well, Cleveland looked pretty damn good on Sunday when it wasn't Deshaun Watson and when it was Jameis Winston.
Wonderful.
Back there.
The week before they played the Chargers.
Great timing for that to happen. Mike Williams obviously has the rapport with Justin Herbert. And honestly, especially with what has happened with the Jets over the last 3 weeks since firing Robert Saleh, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't try to move some pieces around. First of all, it was already a crowded wide receiver room as soon as Devontae Adams got in there. And now you've lost 3 straight since you fired your head coach. Mm-hmm. I think the Jets are definitely going to be sellers at some circumstance, and wide receiver just makes a lot of sense for them. So
the other one.
It's a little bit give and take because it would depend on who the tight end is. I would need to see a better receiving threat at tight end because you already have your blocker. So if you're able to pull off a trade for one of those, great. If not, then Mike Williams, seemingly from a chemistry and rapport standpoint with Justin Herbert, to me would make a lot of sense.
I get the chemistry and trust and rapport part. I get that. I just don't.
Is he my top wide receiver choice? No.
Yeah, and like, do I like? I think he would marginally move the needle. I don't think he's the one that takes this core over the top. I don't think Mike Williams brings the most of what this Chargers core needs. Like, this Chargers core needs juice, needs volume, needs separation, needs speed. He has none of that. He has playmaking, sure. He's an 80-20 jump ball guy. Absolutely. At least he was. I'm not sure what he is right now when healthy, if healthy. Like, that's a lot to rely on as your savior for this core. I'd rather have the other Jets receiver. I'd rather have Garrett Wilson if he's available. Chris Olave from the Saints, I would take. I think Deontay Johnson's probably the most realistic.
Yes.
But also the most exciting. Go look at his highlights. Go look at some of the catches and some of the things he's doing on a bad team right now. Look what he's doing with a bad quarterback last year in Pittsburgh. So I like it. I think he brings the hands, the volume, the speed, athleticism. Can take the top off on a, I think, relatively reasonable contract for at least compensation pick. I mean, you're probably going to get one back too if he walks. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. And again, that's a log jam of receivers, man. You got Quentin coming back. You got Darius coming back. You've got DJ Chark coming. And then possibly Deontay Johnson. That's 4 receivers you're adding to Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer. That's a stacked group if you could do that. Imagine that being your receiving core. DJ Chark, Ladd McConkey, Darius Davis, Deontay Johnson, Quentin. You're feeling a lot better about that.
So would Fehoko be your 6 in that circumstance?
Let's see. Quentin, Palmer, McConkey, Davis, Chark, Johnson. That's 6. Give me 7.
There'd be some interesting conversations to have to try to work that wide receiver room out.
Yeah. Let's get another voicemail, Jake. I think there was one in here that we had. This is going to perk your ears up, Jake. We have one that's related to the draft.
Hey, yeah. Now we're talking.
Which we had some people talk about the draft here in the chat as well. So we'll get to some draft questions. But what you got to say?
Hi guys, love your show. I just have a quick question. Would you guys be surprised if the Chargers pick a guard in round 1 of next year's draft? Hey.
I would say that as it stands right now, that there's more pressing needs for the Chargers on the offensive line. Now, look, do I think that they're still going to address the offensive line next year? Absolutely. First round guard, though, no. And I say that from the standpoint of the talent that is going to be on the board whenever the Chargers end up picking. For now, let's just call it around 20. Dan, they spent two of their first 2 picks addressing the offense last year. I think they flipped that this year. Maybe not 2 picks in a row, but I think that they're going to address the defensive line in some form or fashion, whether that's the interior or the edge, with the first round pick this year. So there's plenty of talent, especially in the interior of the defensive line. This edge group is rounding out very, very nicely. You don't know essentially what your edge room is going to look like after this year, given who we're talking about here. And in the interior of that defensive line, you need someone who's going to be able to eat up double teams on that. So obviously I'm talking about the lines of Walker, Kenneth Grant. There's plenty of names from the interior of the defensive line that you could look at, pass rusher as well. But I think that given the fact that you invested high picks to help your offense out last year, 2 in a row to be exact, I think you flip that and you go defense. So I definitely think that they address the guard. They're not going to stay away from protecting their top investment. Do I think that they draft a guard next year? Yes. Do I think it happens in the first round? No.
and a center. We'll talk about that for another day. You know when you're a parent to a toddler, when you see the word unknown and you immediately think of Frozen and all the 37,000 times your daughter sings the Elsa song, Into the Unknown, for all those fathers and mothers out there. Unknown, Jake says, Dan and Jake, the next Travis Kelce is in the draft class. And he's referring to the Michigan kid.
Yes. Well, that's Mr. Colston Loveland, who a lot of people already have connected with Jim Harbaugh, and rightfully so. But Dan, this tight end class, while everybody was looking at the previous few years in terms of how good that was, and we all remember our conversations that we were having about why Tom Telesco did not pick up a tight end in that particular draft. But my God, Tyler Warren out of Penn State also looks phenomenal as far as a receiving threat grows. So it's tough. It's tough to say that. Do I think that the Chargers go tight end next year as well? So you have Will Dissly on a long-term contract. You may just have him end up being resorted to his blocking duties as a full-timer. You still need a receiving threat. So yeah, I could see that being a possibility as well. Now, in terms of where tight end is going to line up as far as the big board goes when it's all said and done, who knows? We all know that I was a huge Brock Bowers fan leading into this last draft, and thank you, Tom Telesco, because now you're showing everybody why he was such a high pick in that regards as far as where he went in the draft. But yeah, I would have to believe that tight end is going to be a priority for the Chargers, whether it's in free agency or the draft next year.
Yeah, Alan says, I think they need to keep both Kristian Fulton and Elijah Molden. Again, we talked about how many free agent signings they had this year. And people earlier in the chat were saying how one of the only, if not the only bust, quote unquote, has been Hayden Hurst, which I don't know if I agree with. We haven't seen much of Gus Edwards. We haven't seen much of DJ Chark yet. We haven't seen much from Hayden Hurst. Like, not all of them have panned out, but a lot of them have. And they have hit on a ton. And you need to. They needed to.
Well, the good thing is the Chargers are actually going to have a good cap space number going into next year, where this year they did not, and still look at what they have done given limited cap space and some of the players that they had to jettison to make a team. And they've done a pretty damn good job. Let's see what Joe Hortiz is going to be able to do when he actually has money to spend.
Johnson is old, says Unknown. I'm pretty sure if he's referring to Deontay Johnson, he's 28. He's not old. I don't know why we're talking no old receivers. If there was a receiver that you got to choose, if you had your choice, it would be realistic.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
It'd still be Deontay Johnson, number one.
I think I'm with you. I mean, I think pipe dream would be Garrett Wilson. Like, if you could get Garrett Wilson for, let's say, a second-round pick, would you do it? He still has years left in that contract.
Sure, but I highly doubt that the Jets would let that go.
You don't think they do it?
Something just tells me, outside of what you've seen from the Jets so far this year, I think that might be one that they stave off on, because however long Aaron Rodgers is going to stay with the team, depending on how the rest of the season goes, you don't know. They still may want that as a critical piece. I just don't know that they will let that go for a second-round pick. I think it's first or nothing for them.
I don't think it's as easy of a no as people are making it out to be. Because when you got Devontae Adams on your team, like, that's...
I understand that, Dan. But at the same time, look at everything that's happened with this team. Last year, all they were saying was we needed just a quarterback because it would have made them a championship team given how their defense was playing this year. Who knows what the end of the season is going to look like for the New York Jets and where they're going to go, because there are so many questions now from quarterback, coach, personnel alike.
Would you do a fourth for Deontay Johnson?
Yes, I would.
Even with an expiring contract?
Because the Chargers are going to have money to spend next year. Yeah, I do. And it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion to say that he would ultimately end up come and sign back, but it's more flexibility for the Chargers that I find that a much more realistic possibility to do.
Sure. Athir says, next live show, I'm sending a super chat, $10. Let's see it, Athir. Let's see it. You got something important to say, so get ready. Fam, get ready. Athir's got something to say next time. $10 super chat's going to go right to the top. Athir, we're here for you. Let us know. Alan wants to know, Jake, what are you drinking?
Well, if he's referring to, if you're following me on Twitter, I like the occasional, whiskey, scotch, whatever it is.
Yep.
I hope this is not to imply like, dude, what are you drink? Like, what are you smoking? Like, what are you drinking? I was like, I am not drinking right now. I am not drinking on this show. I have not been drinking.
I didn't see a drink.
No. So, but hey, when the occasion calls for it, when you put your feet up and you're watching a good football game, you can't beat a nice Eagle Rare, a nice Booker's. Oh, those just hit the spot.
Jake, I made it. People were talking about how excited I was when we were talking about the name Elijah Molden. Do you see the name on the screen now?
Well, Dan, let's just say this much. With the injuries to Nico Collins and now more recently with Stephon Diggs, maybe you'll get back to those old type feelings that you had, because Tank Dell is
can't do it.
Going to be wide receiver 1 for a period of time here with the Houston Texans, and we may be seeing the exact same type of highlights that we saw earlier from him last year.
A fear. I love you, my baby, but why would you do this to me? I was just getting over Tank. And here you go, making that thought creep back in my head about what that could have looked like with him and Justin. Everyone here knows who was riding shotgun on that train next to Tank Dell on the hype train for Tank Dell. Yeah, obviously, I would love to see Tank Dell on the Chargers, but it's not happening. There's no way. Let's see. Sky Moore is the name here. Does that move the needle for you?
Yeah, I haven't even seen anything on that. I don't think that's legit.
No, but I'm saying I don't even know if that's true. But
no, I thought Sky Moore was put on IR.
I don't know. If folks in the chat, let us know. Is that real?
I don't believe it. Is that legit? Seriously?
I don't know.
I thought he was put on injured reserve, and that was another one of the reasons why they went out and signed Hopkins.
Also, why would they go get?
Why would they do an interdivisional trade as well?
Maybe. We'll see. Defense. I think we have to talk about this. What's your take on Joey Bosa in this situation right now?
It's tough, Dan. We all knew that he was going to be on a snap count coming into this game. He played 19 snaps, wasn't able to record a pressure. From what we've seen from some of the video highlights, we know he didn't play the entire game because he looked like he ended up coming and aggravated something. We know he came into this, he was out for these last few weeks due to a hip injury. I've had that type of injury before. It sucks, especially when you're trying to sleep. It's no good. I would hope that it's just a flare-up and that it's nothing that's going to keep him out for a long period of time, because I know that there's been a lot of comments about Joey Bosa for a period of time, and say what you will in terms of the injury history, and I could totally understand it. But when he is in there and when he is healthy, and unfortunately that is the term that follows these type of sentences with Joey Bosa, but he's one of the best edge setters in the league as it relates to stopping the run. I think that even coming into this game, while the Chargers ended up recording 5 sacks, the pass rush out of Khalil Mack, to me, just seemingly disappeared from this edge group. You didn't have that same type of impact that you had with the Denver game, with the Arizona game. You just didn't have that. And since Joey Bosa's been out, I feel like that presence of a pass rush has just completely gone outside of what Khalil Mack has brought to the field. So
they had 5 sacks.
They still had 5 sacks, and I like the people who got the 5 sacks. I'm just hoping for good news, because this Chargers defense, regardless of what you want to say about Joey Bosa, focus on this week, not about next year. And when he's on the field, he makes this team better.
So what? I missed it today. I'm on vacation. What is the latest from Bosa? Because I saw back and forth of if he was hurt or wasn't
Jim Harbaugh
hurt.
had said that he didn't even know about anything flaring up when he was asked about it at his press conference today. But you go back and when he was asked about his press conference today, he said that he was not aware of anything flaring up. But you go back and you watch the tape and you could specifically see where Joey Bosa pulls up on the play.
I saw that.
After that. Yes. So, Jim, he will not say anything as it relates to specifics as it relates to injuries. So it doesn't surprise me that he said what he said today. So I'm sure we're going to find out come Wednesday's injury report.
What did you make of the Chargers' run game, Jake? I thought for the most part, the numbers didn't look all that great. I mean, you saw the 120 plus yards because of Justin Herbert's run, which was fantastic to see. All of us, I'm sure, were up screaming out of our minds in excitement. I thought J.K. Dobbins didn't really have that much to work with, but he ran hard, man. Like, those are some tough earned yards.
Yeah, I mean, look,
it showed up in the box score, but
it was better than the Arizona game. Let's just call it that. I think it was serviceable. Look, I have been a champion of J.K. Dobbins since he arrived with this team. I love what he did those first 2 weeks of the season when the running game was clicking. I think also teams are figuring out where to attack the Chargers offensive line, especially when it's not performing in the interior the way that it was for the first 2 weeks. So J.K. Dobbins is been limited, I would say, to more of a kind of a secondary offensive role outside of Justin Herbert. You're seeing this offense now shift. The most balance that it had, obviously, was in that Denver game when you had Justin Herbert put up the numbers he did and J.K. Dobbins put up the numbers that he did in that game. You want to try to get back to having a balanced offense. Now, for the most part, outside of what Justin Herbert did, the running game was okay. You go back and you watch his touchdown run. Scott Matlock had a phenomenal block that got him free into the end zone for that game. You just hope that your blocking gets better for J.K. Dobbins. It seems like J.K. Dobbins is running so hard, and for the last few weeks he looks like he's been right there to break something open. And it just hasn't come the way that it was coming those first 2 weeks. So you hope that that's not something that Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh are going to go away from unless it's just absolutely not working. They're still going to try to feed J.K. Dobbins. You're hoping that you're going to have Kamani Vidal more involved. I mean, I will give New Orleans Saints this. They had the screen scouted. And whether we're talking about J.K. Dobbins, Kamani Vidal, or the tight end screens, they were not working, period, in this game. So you got to give them credit for that. But overall, as a run game, it's not the Chargers' only weapon. And that works for me. But you'd like to see it be a little bit more balanced overall.
Yeah. Question here. Would folks do a trade for a defensive player, Jake? And then Alan followed up with, I believe it's Greg Newsome from the Browns. Newsome would be great. Do you see them going for a corner? I think a lot of that depends on the health of Kristian Fulton.
I mean, that was that would be interesting considering who the Chargers' next opponent is in the Cleveland Browns. Names like Njoku and obviously Newsome have been thrown out there a lot. So if the Chargers go into Cleveland and handle business and then
one more to the flight home.
Right, yeah. Them being trade partners just shortly afterwards, that would be interesting to see. Dan, depending on what happens with this Joey Bosa situation, you may have to look at edge. I've actually been saying it for the last few weeks. I've been very surprised that they did not activate Tremon Morris-Brash from the practice squad to come in and supplant that because, as I mentioned, the pass rush just really has not been what it was when you had your 4 big name players in there. When Jesse Minter was able to be creative and on certain plays have your line be Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Thule, and Bud Dupree on the field at the same time, which was just nutso. But you haven't had that for weeks. And from the standpoint of what Tremon Morris-Brash does, even if you only have to bring him in on third downs, that's his specialty. His specialty is a third down pass rusher. His specialty is getting after the quarterback. That's what made him a name in college. So I've been very surprised because he really turned it on toward the end of the preseason. And given that, I'm still surprised that they've only really gone. I'm sure that they've tried to kind of get that with Morgan Fox, and I'm sure that other injuries elsewhere, specifically in the secondary and at wide receiver, have limited their decision-making and where they can, bring guys up where they need them. But at the same time, if this lingers with Joey Bosa, I would like to see Tremon Morris-Brash get some more time.
Yeah, I can definitely see edge being a position that they fill at the trade deadline. People are talking about a couple trades here. People are saying trade Josh Palmer or not bring him back next year. Then we have people talking about trade Asante Samuel Jr., which I don't even know if they could or would do that when he's on IR. Just doesn't sound smart. He doesn't get off IR until after the trade deadline's done. So that said, I think his chances of being re-signed are getting lower and lower every time we see more and more of Tarheeb Still. I'll tell you that much. Because Tarheeb Still looks like a player. And Cam Hart looks like a player. And so that's depth from Joe Hortiz, and that's good drafting. And can we just give a quick shout out to Joe Hortiz's draft class right now? When is the last time, Jake, that you and I could sit here and talk about this Chargers draft class producing this much in year one? Like, legitimately.
This just in. Late round picks are important. How about that? Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, for what they have been able to do in a short period of time and stepping up for when Asante Samuel Jr. has been out, when Kristian Fulton was hampering that hamstring injury. And truth be told, Kristian Fulton only played half the snaps yesterday for defense. Cam Hart was fantastic yesterday. You saw the hit that he laid on Chris Olave to cause an incomplete pass. Tarheeb Still, I think both of them have kind of traded weeks in terms of who's had the better week, going all the way back to the Denver game. You know, last week was not Cam Hart's best week due to some unfortunate timed penalties that he ended up committing. But this week, he rebounded very nicely. Dan, Jasir Taylor, when he was in the game, not necessarily a starter, but when he was in the game, targeted 3 times, didn't allow a single reception. Tarheeb Still, I think he had 2 passes defended, if I remember correctly. And Cam Hart targeted 3 times, only allowed 1 catch for 15 yards. In total, Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still allowed 5 catches for only 55 yards. They've done an exceptional job considering where they were drafted. And this is what happens when you have a front office with a good scouting team and player development on top of good coaching to be able to coach up your secondary players. We give so much credit to Jesse Minter. We once again need to give credit to Steve Clinkscale, the secondary coach, and his message that he has put out since day one that he had his press conference in terms of having guys ready to step up, because he even said it in his press conference. He anticipated injuries happening. You haven't had Dean Leonard. You haven't had Asante Samuel Jr. At certain points of the year, you haven't had Kristian Fulton, and Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart have picked up that slack.
Do you remember during the draft when there were certain people who were talking about cornerbacks not mattering, and we didn't need to draft any corners, and then they go ahead and draft 2 corners, and they end up playing this much, and they end up trading for another one, and is this pivotal? That's what good secondary play mixed with good coaching does to your point.
What good front office and good drafting does as well.
Feels good. Feels good to see it happen to your team. Jake, not all positivity on this show. I've committed to that from now on. It wasn't all good. It wasn't all great. There was some bad in this game. Let's get to some of the things that they need to work on moving forward.
Well, tackling, unfortunately, was an issue that kind of came over from the Arizona game.
Especially on running backs.
James Conner forced 12 missed tackles alone in that game in Arizona. It didn't get much better, especially when you look at the run that Alvin Kamara had. Bud Dupree was trying to rip the ball out, cause a fumble. Unfortunately, that just allowed Kamara to get free, and he ended up going down the field even more. So there was plenty of things to clean up defensively. And Jesse Minter had talked about that, and just in general, the mindset that he has kept from his team, even in victories, to make it seem like they didn't win the game, to feel like there's still things that need to be corrected. So yeah, tackling needs to improve. Dan, I thought even with Spencer Rattler, I thought the middle of the field was attacked more often than it normally is with the linebacker group. You got to clean that up as well. So, defensively, that was where I would say. Offensively, we're kind of back to the same things that we have our normal concerns about with the interior of the offensive line. Justin Herbert, even though the fact that he was back to being healthy and his ability to escape pressure, was still sacked more times than you would have liked to have seen, especially during the beginning part of that game. So, again, things to correct, especially in the trenches and in aspects of the middle of the defense as well.
Yeah, there's comments in here about moving Zion back to right guard, moving to center because he's been a bad left guard. I wouldn't say it. He's been great run blocking. He needs to work on pass protection for sure. Which again, that's the entire interior offensive line needs to work on that. I don't know if moving into right guard is the answer or center is the answer. I really don't, because on run blocking plays, him and Rashawn Slater with all pulling, that's a pretty darn good trio. That's a road grading trio right there. So I don't mind that. I still have faith in Zion. Has he lived up to his potential? No, but I think he could, for sure. I think he could. A couple things that still have not really proven well. We talked about this Chargers offense finally scoring a second half touchdown, which, hallelujah. But their third down still not great. They were 3 for 12 in that game. Not great. Again, Saints are 2 for 16, which is worse. But 25% conversion is not good third down conversion.
At least when you needed the third down conversions, if you go back and you look at what those conversions were, they were big time plays that ultimately ended up making huge impacts in the game. But yes, overall, as it stands, 3 for 12 on third down, no, that's not going to get it done against a better opponent.
No. I think there's still some containment issues going up against mobile quarterbacks that drive me absolutely insane. Again, you're going up against a far less athletic quarterback than Kyler Murray and Bo Nix, but you still saw some of that. I can't really say much, though, really. The defense has looked so good. They've gave up 6 points, 2 of which was a safety, so I don't put that on them. 6 points in an NFL game is hard to do, man. That is hard to do. I mean, the defense looked good. Offensively, we talked about interior offensive line. Run game, I think, needs to get back. I don't know if that's because Gus Edwards isn't there anymore. I don't know if that's because interior offensive line and or Kamani Vidal needs more playing time. But they got to get that back. I think that helps out a ton. But at the same time, it's hard when you see Justin slaying it like this. I think that's why there's been so much action for Justin getting another receiver. It's like, all right, well, if they can't run it that well, give him weapons where you can just throw over the top of all the pressure. So I don't know. There's obviously a balance, right? But even in that game when Justin was flying, right? Like, he looked good, but at the same time, the Chargers run game, there was still volume there. And I think that's what matters. Is it still balanced? Time of possession was balanced. Still had 17 carries by J.K. Dobbins for 57 yards. Like, 17 carries is good. Another 6 by Kamani Vidal. Like, that's what, 23, 24 carries total by running backs? Like, that's, would you usually see more in the Greg Roman offense? Probably, but 24 is not minimal. So, I don't know. I'm kind of okay with that. I do think the challenging of some of those were tough. I think because Jim Harbaugh missed that first challenge, I think he's probably a little gun shy to challenge that second one on Semi Fehoko touchdown. But that seemed like a touchdown. I don't know the rule of the heel going backwards, hitting the ground.
Looked like a touchdown to me.
Yeah, I don't know. But otherwise, I think there was somebody in the chat saying, shout out to Thule. Shout out to Thule.
Yes.
They look good.
Yes.
I love seeing the batted balls again. Shout out to Tahir Tart.
He got up for that one and was so excited about it. He even jumped again after it was an incomplete pass. He got a whole foot off the ground, but he got up there.
Yeah, that looked good, and that was important because that looked like it was open for a lot if he didn't do that. But Dupree at the end of that game, that was a bummer. Luckily, it didn't cost him any points, but that unnecessary roughing the passer at the end of the game, that doesn't need to happen. Game's over. I thought Cam Hart's looking good, man. I really like Cam Hart. If he could stay healthy, he has all the tools. Him and Tarkib is a great tandem of cornerbacks drafted this year. Cameron Ticker, again, I know he missed an extra point, so that sucks. But the kid is automatic if it's a field goal. It's just insane. He's literally never, I'm knocking on wood, he has not missed a kick inside 50.
No. You saw how valuable, obviously, he was last week, even in a loss against Arizona, just booting the crap out of the ball, and seemingly that 59-yard one that he just makes it look easy. Yep. And when you're getting in rarefied air with that much efficiency in the Justin Tucker type conversations, there's something there with this kid. He just has that ice. And yes, it was very just uncharacteristic when you see him miss an extra point from the Chargers' first touchdown at the end of the putting. You're like, wait, what? That's unusual. But move the extra points back into the 30 yards, and all of a sudden it'll be automatic for him.
Yep. Last voicemail here, Jake, before we get out of here. I know we're going a little long here, but this is too much fun. Again, 323-902-7586. We got to get some more energy in these. I think I'm rubbing off on them. You're rubbing off on them. We got all pessimism. Chargers just won. Just won a football game.
How am I rubbing off negatively?
According to half the people in the chat, you are. That's what we saw.
Where has that been?
I think this is one of those I don't know what to do with my hands moments where Chargers fans are like, okay, we're 4-3. We're only 1 win away from the entire total of 2023.
Look, I can get behind the aspect of okay, Chargers are 4-3. Who have they beaten? Look, the Chargers don't make the schedule. They don't plan the times when you're playing the Saints when they don't have Derek Carr as the quarterback. You go in and you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. Historically, we would say that exact same sentence for the Chargers in certain situations like this, and we'd be talking the following Monday, and it would be a loss.
Yep. 100%. Alan asks, I wonder what's Joe waiting on to make a trade?
You know it always takes two to tango. As much as we want to sit here and talk about the trades that have been made thus far, most notably with the Kansas City Chiefs in acquiring Josh Uche earlier today and DeAndre Hopkins last week, there's always two sides to a trade. So yes, I do not believe that this is a similar type of Tom Telesco situation, because remember, just last week, the news had broken that Cooper Kupp was going to be traded, that they were looking for a second-round pick. What happens Thursday night? All of a sudden, the Rams are right back in contention in their division, and now Cooper Kupp is off the table. So there's an old saying, deadlines create deals. I think as we get closer to the trade deadline, I think you're going to see more movement.
We're close. Last one here. Gerald from Connecticut. A little long, so I'm going to have to cut this one short. We'll see what he has to say for a bit of this before we have to cut it off. So I think this is almost a 3-minute voicemail. So here we go.
Hey, Chargers Unleashed. It's Gerald from Connecticut once again. Just heard the Chargers got back on the winning train, beating the Saints 26-8. It wasn't pretty, wasn't easy at first, but eventually they took care of business. A much-needed victory after that disappointing loss in Arizona against the Cardinals, a winnable game, no doubt, but they handled the Saints team that's been depleted. Seeing Justin Herbert being back to himself, McConkey is just freaking awesome, you know?
Shout out to McConkey. He deserves all the praise.
His rapport with Justin is fantastic. The running game, slowly but surely, is getting back. J.K. Dobbins is running hard and he's proven himself to be the number one running back. I mean, the defense was absolutely fantastic. Pretty good special teams, actually really good special teams play. We're 4-3, and now we'll have a chance to go 5-3 next week against Cleveland, who beat Baltimore. So that.
I will cut off there. So he goes on to just talk about the Chargers team possibly making a trade at the deadline, early November. A lot there, obviously, but a win is a win is a win. And again, I say it, Chargers had 5 wins all last season. They were banged up last season. They're banged up this season. Justin Herbert was hurt last season. Justin Herbert is hurt this season. Granted, they didn't play Justin the last whatever games. Still, they're a win away from their 2023 total already in week 8. So clearly in the playoff picture now. They're currently in the playoffs if it ended today. They've got a nice little stretch here of winnable games. just like we say the chips went their way where they got to have a Derek Carr less Saints team. In my opinion, chips went against them when they now have a Deshaun Watson less Browns team, plus Nick Chubb.
Yeah, you can't sleep on the Browns after a performance like that, especially when they still field one of the best defensive players in the league in Myles Garrett coming up for Cleveland. So we were just talking about this 2 weeks ago, looking at how favorable the schedule was over a 4-game stretch. That was when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. And now all of a sudden, Jameis Winston steps in and throws for 300 plus for 3 touchdowns, absolutely invigorates this team with a divisional win against one of the best teams in the league. They may be riding a high with the Chargers coming into town. And you go to Cleveland for this game, and then you come back and you have a game against the Titans. I would still say that the game against Cleveland is one that you'd feel favorable because there's some familiarity, because Greg Roman knows what it's like to coach against the Cleveland Browns. J.K. Dobbins knows what it's like to play against the Cleveland Browns. So I'm sure that this is going to be another one of those type of games where there's going to be a lot of preparation. Defensively, I think that Jesse Minter is going to have his guys ready to play. These things that we have talked about in terms of what needs to be corrected, I would like to see the running game be more productive coming up this week against Cleveland. I would like to see the interior of that line be a little bit more stout and not allowing interior pressure to Justin Herbert. Still a lot of things that need to be corrected. But the fact that Justin Herbert is now hitting his stride at this point of the year and seeing a game like that to get right on, you feel good still going into a game that is probably going to be tougher than it was 2 weeks ago. But you got to come away with a win, because all of a sudden Denver still is ahead of you as it stands right now. Kansas City is still ahead of you as it stands right now in the division. You cannot let these opportunities slip through your fingers when you have this part of the schedule for you.
100%. Jake, let's get out of here on this one. Last piece here. People talking about Darius Slayton on the Giants.
Yes.
Darius Slayton, Deontay Johnson.
I'd still go with Deontay. Honestly, I still would.
Yeah, I think I would too. Deontay Johnson would be nice on this team. I think he has the tools that this team lacks a lot of, and he could be the volume guy. He could bring so much stress off his team, man. It'd be so nice to see this team be able to just air it out a bit. I'd open it up so much. I'm good with Deontay Johnson. Jake, we went through a bunch here. Chargers, again, victorious. Beat the Saints, improved to 4-3, 26-8. Weird scoring. A lot of weird stuff happening early in that game, but the Chargers take care of business. 2 second-half bold predictions succeeding. Touchdowns by this Los Angeles Chargers team. Lad McConkey has a day. Justin Herbert slings it, and defense continues to do its thing. Anything else, Jake, before we get out of here? I know it's late.
Appreciate you accommodating your schedule being 3 hours ahead, because it's now, what time is it there in Boston?
10:42.
10:42. And doing this on a whim, fantastic. Again, we always love live shows and getting everybody in here to interact, to answer the Chargers Unleashed hotline, and of course to answer your guys' questions. Always appreciated. Victory Monday always tastes good. Let's hope that we can make it 2 in a row, and we'll be back later on this week to preview the Chargers going up against the Cleveland Browns.
We will. I can't wait. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you have not already done so, take 10 seconds, hit that like and subscribe. Leave us a review, a comment. Helps us out a ton. We appreciate you guys. We love doing live shows. These are always so much fun. But until the next one, for Jake Hefner, you can find him at Dan. That's not true. You can't find him at Dan. You can find Jake Hefner at JT Hefner. Myself, you could find, if I'm not stumbling over my words, at Dan W Sports on X. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed. Have a good night, everybody.